I'm Helen Driggs. I'm the managing editor for Lapidary Journal, Jewelry Artist Magazine. I'm a metalsmith, and I'm going to show you some basic metalworking techniques. We're going to talk about metal. When you buy metal, it comes in different sizes, different weights, different shapes, and different metals. The three things you'll need to know when you're buying metal is what kind of metal you'd like, what gauge you'd like to buy it in, and how big or heavy a sheet you would like to get. Unless it's wire, then it's measured by the foot or it's measured by weight. So I'm going to show you some different kinds of metal that are available and talk about each kind. Typically, metalsmiths use base metals to start with. Most of those are copper alloys. This is all copper. This is 20 gauge sheet. The gauge refers to the thickness of the metal, and it works with wire or sheet. And you can use a caliper like this or a different kind of scale or gauge to measure it. But you need to know how thick a metal you want. You can also buy copper patterned. The thicker the gauge metal, the lower the number. So 16 gauge is thicker than 20 gauge metal. You can also get bronze, which is a mixture of copper and another metal, zinc, or proprietary metals according to the Mills formula. There's brass, there's patterned brass, and now they just started making pre-patinaed brass and bronze, which is an exciting new thing because you don't have to use chemicals to get the color on your metal. There's also nickel silver. There's aluminum, anodized aluminum, and this comes in many different colors. They put it through a chemical process that permanently colors the metal with oxides and chemicals, and it comes in a rainbow of colors. This is tubing. There's also different kinds of bar stock. You can get squares, triangles, rectangles, rod, hollow rod, twisted rod. The best thing to do is look in a metal supplier's catalog or on their website to make your choices. Also, wire comes in spooled coils like this, or they will roll it off a giant spool at the jewelry supply house, and you can buy it by the foot or by the pound. Then when you seriously get into metal work and you want to start casting your own work, you can also buy metal in grain form to create a wax model, melt the metal, and pour it into your mold. So this is called casting grain, and this is weighed. Most of the time, the base metals like copper, brass, bronze, aluminum, nickel, you buy by the size sheet. But precious metal like silver, gold, platinum, you weigh it because every day the value fluctuates according to the market price and what's available in the world at that moment. So, you know, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you could pay one price for silver. In the afternoon, you could pay another price for silver, and it's the same piece of silver. That's called the spot price. When you're casting, you purchase grain. If you're going to alloy metal, you would purchase several kinds of casting grain and mix them together when you melt them to get the carat of metal that you'd like. This is plain sterling silver, and you would need to know the weight of what you want to purchase and the weight of what you're going to cast. You can get one of these little scales, and you just pour out your grain and compare it to the finished weight that you need. You can remove with tweezers if you pour too much. If you're going to alloy metal, you'll need to know what the percentages of metal for the alloy you're creating are. Weigh each metal separately, then mix them together in the crucible before you melt them with the torch. This is sterling silver. A lot of times you'll start with copper and then go to silver. Silver's cheaper than gold to work with, but it behaves differently from gold. And that's another thing about metal. Each one behaves differently in sawing it, in cutting it, in folding it, in soldering it, in casting it. Each metal has its own properties. And as you get experience with metals, you'll figure out which metal is the proper one for the piece that you'd like to make. So that is a look at how to buy metal, how to measure metal, and how to weigh metal. And you'll need to know that for every project you do. When you're working with metal close, it's a good idea to sit down at your bench. Make sure your bench pin is about even with your sternum, because you want to be able to see right here what you're doing without crooking your neck down or looking up or bending yourself in a weird way. Your body will thank you if your worktop, is the right height. I'm going to show you some quick and dirty measuring tricks, because when you're talking about oddly shaped items, it's sometimes hard to figure out how to divide and measure them evenly. And in jewelry, small miscalculations in measuring are as big as a mile, because it's a tiny scaled thing, and people will notice if something is 1/10 of a millimeter off. They will see it, and it won't look right to them, and they won't know why, but it's because of bad measuring. Circles. Once you've cut your circle out with the disc cutter, then what do? Suppose you want to put, evenly drilled holes around it, or find the center to put a hole in the middle. And once you've cut it out, you've lost any reference. So what I like to do is use a circle template. You can get these at the art supply store, or a drafting supply house, any place that is well stocked for artists. You'll notice that these have crosshairs on them. So I put the disc in the right size opening and mark where the crosshairs are. That side's not got one. You want to try not to move it. So I have the crosshairs on 3 sides because on this template the 4th side has disappeared, but it's no matter, because how you're going to find the center of this disc is with a L square against a steel block. This is machined to be 90 degrees. You can rely on it. You want to lay your circle on there. I have to put my eyes on. So that the crosshairs, when this L square is pushed against here, so that the crosshairs are right at the top bar. And then do yourself a favor and tape it down. Okay, so tape it down, and then use your Sharpie or marker or scribe, whatever you want to do, to push against it and draw a line. And now to find the 90 degree perpendicular, I have a little artist's triangle. You can use a 45 or 30-60, it doesn't matter. You just want to be sure that this is against the edge of the block and the triangle hits the tick mark that you made. And then when you draw that line, allow for the thickness of the nib. You know that that's the center of that circle, because these are, it's in the way, because these are 90 degrees to each other when you use these 2 tools together. So that's a great way to find the center of a circle. Another great tool that's fabulous to have around, sometimes hard to find, this is called a center finder. This handy gadget will find the center of any object, no matter what shape it is. I can put a circle in here. You just slide it in the slot, this V slot, and draw a line on the back. Then turn it, doesn't matter how much. Draw another line in the V slot in the back. The intersection of those 2 lines is the center of that circle. But it also works with this, an odd shaped thing. I can put that in there, draw a line like that, draw a line like that, draw a line like that, draw this. And now you see it's created a diamond shape on the back. If I connect the 2 points of this diamond and the 2 points of this diamond. That little dot right there is the center of this object. This handy tool, it's hard to find, but a well-stocked art supply store, I know that Allcraft Tools in New York City has them once in a while, but you're going to find it in a drafting or art supply store, same as the circle template. Okay. Now, suppose you have a cuff bracelet you made. You really like it, it's a little plain, and you decide that you want to put something on top in the center like that. How do you find the center now that it's a three-dimensional object? Easy way to do that is to use tracing paper and wrap the tracing paper around the bracelet. And mark the edge and mark the edge, and then unroll the tracing paper so that it's flat, and draw a straight line from mark to mark. And then you could measure this and do all that, mathematics, or here's a simple secret trick from my graphic designer days. You want to draw vertical lines. Ideally, you do this with a T-square, but you'll get the idea. You want to draw vertical lines at the edges. Then you can take any measuring device. Say I wanted to put one in the middle, one here, and one here. So I need to make 3 divisions. I know that 9 divides by 3, so I can go from here, except my lines aren't long enough. Okay, I know that 6 is divisible by 3. So I'm going to angle this ruler so that 6 hits this line and 0 hits this line, and make a mark at 4 and 2. I know that these lines are equidistant from the edges. And that's an easy way to divide any measurement without doing any math. And then again, you ideally use a T-square, but that intersection and that intersection are the 3 divisions for this bracelet. And if you roll it around, you'll see that it proves it out. So now those vertical lines are equally spaced on the top of that bracelet cuff. One more fabulous tool. These are, you can sometimes find this as a printed diagram in the back of metalworking books. Like I know the Complete Metalsmith has it. Several other pretty famous metalsmithing books have it. This is a divided circle. This is machined aluminum. I bought this one, again, from Allcraft in New York, because it's near where I live. But you can take any circle and lie it on here, like if you wanted to put stones on a ring band. You could lie the ring band on here, and these radiating lines, say you want to put, I don't know, 8 stones, you can just make tick marks around this and have evenly spaced divisions all the way around the circle. So if you can find one of these, grab it. It's a great tool to have. Otherwise, you can Xerox one from the back of a metalsmithing book and laminate it to keep it clean on your bench. But great tool to have. Another tool that's great to have is dividers or calipers. This is an old set from a drafting kit, but they also, you can get them like this from any jewelry supply house. This is a really great tool that's underrated, mostly because I think people don't know how to use it, but it's very simple to use. If you have a measurement that you know you want, you can take this tool, put it on a ruler, and say I want 1/8 of an inch. You just squeeze the legs in, put it on the 1/8 of an inch. Oops, tighten the legs. And these calipers are marked at 1/8 of an inch now. Why is that useful? Well, you could come to your metal and scribe it. That little scribe right there is 1/8 of an inch. So now I want to go another 1/8 of an inch. I can just turn the caliper like that scribe another 1/8 of an inch, and go all the way across the metal like that. You get the picture. And each one of these scratches will be at an 1/8 of an inch. This is also helpful to check the width of something that you filed. You can just run this down and check for consistency. You can go around in a circle like this on rod, and that mark is an 1/8 of an inch from the end. Very useful tool to have. You can also use these to find the center of something by guesstimating where you think the halfway point is. Like, I'm just going to eyeball this, and I think it's probably around there. If you put one leg in your bench top and push that against there and scribe an arc, and then turn it around and do the same thing, and do it again, you're going to isolate a little cell in the center. That's the center of this object. And you didn't have to measure anything. Another good use for the calipers is to accurately mark in from an edge. Say you wanted to etch a design on the inside of this. You can use these to run along the edge of your sawn metal all the way around, and you'll see that that distance is perfectly scribed from your cut line. You can do it on the other side. Now you know that that border and that border are absolutely equal. And then you could draw your etching design in here, protect this with the mordant, and protect this from the mordant, and then you can etch away. So these are a great tool. Using these very simple tools, rulers, L-squares, triangle, and calipers, you can accurately measure your metal, which is really important for making good, beautiful jewelry. Talk about marking your metal and preparing it to saw out a pattern, metal conservation, and also practice sawing. There's things you should know depending on which hand you use when you're sawing, when you adhere your pattern to the metal, because if you're left-handed, you're going to want your waste metal on this side so you can hold it in your right hand. If you're right-handed, you're going to want your waste metal on the left so you can hold it with your left hand. If you do it backwards, you're not going to have any metal to hold on to while you're cutting. So keep that in mind when you're adhering your pattern to the metal. This is aluminum. It's inexpensive. It's a good metal to practice on. However, every time you adhere a pattern to metal, pretend that it is platinum and it costs you several $1,000s, because you always want to conserve metal with a mind for which direction you're going to saw. So if I were doing this little flower, it would waste a lot of metal if I glued it right there in the middle, because I'd have to cut into it, cut around it, and then there'd be a big hole in it, and I couldn't use the rest of the metal for anything else. So obviously I'm going to want to put this as close to a corner as I can get, but not be over the edge. There's many different ways to adhere a pattern to metal. I learned that you use rubber cement, and that works for me. Some people use glue stick, some people use double stick tape. Some people paint the metal white and draw the pattern on. Some people scribe the metal lines, the cutting lines, with a scribe. So it's really just what method works best for you. This metal that comes from the mill sometimes has surface scratches, oil, fingerprints. With rubber cement, it's not critical, but I like to give it a little scrub with one of these Scotch-Brite green scrubby pads, just to tooth up the surface a little bit and make sure the glue has something to stick to and there's not any greasy fingerprints on the metal. And then another thing I do is try and trim the pattern sort of close so I can conserve as much metal as possible. And then there's also one coat rubber cement which stays tacky on the back, and sometimes it's hard to find, but you can get it in an art supply store. And then you want a light coat of this. Make sure you get your edges very well. And then Again, I'm not going to stick it in the middle. I'm going to stick it where it's easy to saw to. I'm right-handed, so I'm adhering this so that I can hold on to it like this when I'm sawing. If I were left-handed, I would have put it in, this corner so that I could hold it with this hand and saw like this. That's how I adhere a pattern to metal. So now we're going to talk about the saw. Learning to use the jeweler's saw is an essential skill for all metal work. Some people hate sawing, some people love sawing. If you don't like it, practice more and you'll learn to like it. It is critical to be able to saw well because you can't cut metal out with shears forever. You have to use a saw. Once you get the knack of it, you'll reach for it over and over. I love sawing. I could do it for hours. This is a jeweler's saw. They come in many different throat depths and sizes. This is a 5-inch. There's also a 4-inch and a 2-inch. If you're a beginner, you want to stick to between a 2-inch and a 5-inch frame because the ones that are even deeper than this, really hard to handle. Most beginners can get by with the 5-inch or the 4-inch or the 2-inch. The problem with a 2-inch is that you might have a hard time turning corners on a 6-inch piece of sheet. So it's good to get the 4-inch as a starting frame. Blades come in different sizes with different number of teeth, in bundles of a dozen or in packets of 12 dozen, which is called a gross. This is the handle. These are the set screws. And all of these adjust. You can adjust the distance here